Okay, thank you all for being here. And Raven and Sara, this is a big day for Raven and Sara at RiverArts. They're doing so much for our organization. But in addition, after they do the salon and talk to us about these great things they're involved with today, tonight they're going to sit at Arts Alive and do the first drop-in post-pandemic of bring a project and sit and hang out and work on something with like-minded souls and just get that energy. And that's so fantastic. And the two of them and Sara Shute, another board member, are spearheading this as volunteers, and I appreciate it and just love the idea so much. So thank you, Raven and Sara, for being here. You both can tell us a little bit more about your backgrounds, but all I would like to say is that you are two of my favorite Chestertonians in terms of educators, enthusiasm in the arts. Every time I see one or the other of you, before I met either of you, when I saw your names, I knew this is somebody I'd like to get to know better. And look at these cool things they're doing. And so I look forward now to hearing in this next little while about these cool things that you have done and are doing. And thanks for being here.
Thank you, Anne. Are you going to share a quote, Anne, or do you want Raven and I?
I will let you all jump in with your quotes because my last minute Googling wasn't as effective today.
Raven and I have this tendency to show up the same places wearing the same outfits. And so I'm wondering, I wonder if we chose the same quote. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'll offer my quote first. So I picked this thinking of Raven and about our project overall and about RiverArts. We have a favorite scholar in common, and his name is Elliot Eisner. And he's a great qualitative researcher and an educational theorist, and someone who really truly loved and believed in the power of art to transform lives. And so this quote is about children, but I think it applies to all of us, and I will offer it as we start today. It says, "The arts teach children that problems can have more than one solution and that questions can have more than one answer." And I think that is a nice way for us to start tonight.
I love that, Sara. I did not pick Elliot Eisner, but there are 9 more such quotes in that document from him that we could quote. My quote is from Michelangelo, and his maybe not so famous quote is, "I am still learning." And that quote hung in my classroom my entire tenure as a teacher because I wanted students to know that even the great artists found themselves learners at all times. So Sara, do you want to tell us about you?
Yes. So I'm Sara. I'm here tonight wearing multiple hats, as Anne said, as a member of the RiverArts community and on the board of RiverArts. But more importantly, maybe even for this moment, as a collaborator of Raven's at Washington College on the Digital Scholarship and Museum Partnerships Project, which is where a lot of where Raven and I get to spend critical and exciting and energetic time thinking about virtual spaces and the power and also the limitations of virtual and augmented reality for learning. So that's what brings me here today.
So I'm Raven, and also all the things Sara said about multiple hats, RiverArts community, and Sara and I collaborate on this project together, which there's a slide for in just a bit. I also lead the virtual and augmented reality digital imaging studio at Washington College, which is situated in the Miller Library. All of those words acronym to VARDIS and nothing else, so we call this studio VARDIS. And so that is a place where I spend a lot of my time working with faculty and students to explore virtual and augmented reality. The studio is pretty new. We started the semester before COVID, and then COVID happened. So we are really excited to be back here, back on campus, and back to exploring AR and VR. We did not stop during the pandemic. We still kept the work up, but it's nice to be back in the studio. So thank you for having us. So Sara very kindly put together a few leading questions for us to consider as we go through our salon tonight.
So basically, you know, the challenge and opportunity of talking to Raven and I about these things is that we can go on at great length about them. And so we thought we would just offer sort of 4 questions. And then to start, and we're going to return to these questions at the end. Either Raven and I will answer them, or we'll have a discussion about them. But the 4 big questions that we would like you to hold in your minds and hearts as you listen to our presentation are questions about the benefits of virtual museum experiences. What do we stand to gain from having from adding virtual experiences to actual museums, or creating virtual spaces, perhaps of places that don't otherwise exist? What can we learn from those virtual museum experiences? This is a big question for both of us as educators, but it's an important question as a visitor for yourself to ask as well. And then we get this question often from museum folks who we work with, who sometimes feel worried that if we're going to create a virtual experience, it's going to mean people don't come in and visit their actual museum. And this is particularly important for small museums, which is really where Raven and I have our expertise and a lot of our experience. And so we always like to have conversations with folks about where virtual experiences succeed in replicating or extending or enhancing in-person learning, and what is not possible to reproduce. And this last question is sometimes the most fun to talk about. So hopefully we'll get to spend some time together later this evening talking about that.
We spend a lot of time with these questions. And we have yet to find full answers to all of them. So it's always exciting to talk about them with people who have an interest. Oops, back to us.
Well, and in this past year with the pandemic and so many people having, like, virtual experiences weren't something lots of people had in any way prior to this. And now everybody knows about virtual experiences and everybody has an opinion. So it's really interesting to learn about your scholarship related to this.
Yeah, we're finding that the interest in virtual experiences is robust, but it's also it's also really varied. And one of the things, so the project that Sara and I work together, there are many, but one of the projects that Sara and I work on together is the DSMP project, Digital Scholarship and Museum Partnerships. We work with local and at times international museums to help them develop virtual and augmented reality content that they otherwise wouldn't be able to produce. And we do that by creating learning opportunities for our students to engage with that museum and help them to build that content while learning their course content. And one of the things that Sara and I feel strongly about is that when we think about virtual reality, augmented reality, that this sounds like really high-tech stuff, and it seems out of reach for small local community curated museums. And the drum that Sara and I beat all the time is that this is not super high-tech stuff. It doesn't have to be, and it is not out of reach for small local community curated museums, and it should not be the stuff of the big national museums. It should not only be the stuff of the big national museums, it should also be the stuff of all museums, and that those small local stories are also really important and deserving of this technology. Sara, anything to add with this slide? I recognize a museum there.
Well, I think that the technology and sort of creating accessible technology enhanced experiences for museums, for Washington College students, and for our K-12 partners are the 3 sort of like major parts of our project. Oh no, and I lost track of the other thing I wanted to add to that. I think that we look at the quality of the experience as basically like the most important outcome, and try to make it a learning experience for everyone throughout. But I don't think we'll get to see it tonight, but I do also want to say that what we make is incredibly high quality products with really, really low barriers to entry. And so we've been really successful in the last 3 years, 4 years, oh my gosh, 4 years, right? In creating some incredibly professional pieces of work. At the top of this page, perhaps this is what Raven was leading me to talk to, is an inside shot of a museum that I've had the privilege of working on for the last 5 years in a community in northern Belize. And I got to bring Raven down and then also some students from Washington College down to test this DSMP model with our community collaborators there. In the bottom, you can see that students really are at the heart of this work. these as educators, that's really the thrust of our investment in this project. And students get to do really amazing and cool things when you're working with small community curated collections. Handling artifacts is not most students' experience at their first internship in a museum. And so we entice students with these sort of world-class and sort of really high impact, high touch experiences in museums that will also really benefit from that type of collaborative energy and the sort of influx of enthusiasm and support that comes from our collaborations. Yeah, we can talk about DSMP all day, but I think we wanted to offer this as an introduction just so you could know why, like, a curriculum theorist and an art educator who also have come into this world sort of are here talking about digital museums, just to let you know a little bit of our own expertise and also to be clear about our investment in this work.
The tool I'm using for this slide presentation is having this unfortunate, like, wanting to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So I spoke about Vardis earlier. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but just to give you a visual of what the studio looks like. It's 2 rooms in the Miller Library, outfitted with VR headsets and digitization equipment and things called merge cubes, which we'll talk about later. 360 scanning equipment, iPads, phones, specialized cameras for taking 360 shots. So this is Sara and her students working on that virtual tour of the Crooked Tree Museum in Belize. Well, they're not in Belize, they're here in Chestertown, working on a VR tour of the museum in Belize here in Vardis. So if you're interested, please stop by Vardis and come check it out, or I'll give you a virtual tour. So just for our own edification today, talking about virtual reality versus augmented reality. With virtual reality, I put on my headset and I'm whisked away to another land. I'm under the sea, or I'm on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm taken out of my reality and put somewhere else by way of wearing this headset. With augmented reality, I'm very much still in my present reality, but now there are digital objects that are also occupying that reality. So on this picture on the left, that iron, that coal iron or iron, this rusty iron here is not actually a real object. It's an iron that you actually saw a few slides ago, a student making a 3D scan of. I've stamped it on my desk at work. So it's next to my real plant, my real coffee cup, and my real VR headset, and this is the digital object, looking very much like a real object in my real world. So using augmented reality technology, we can put museum objects in our real world and enjoy them in a variety of different ways. So in order to access these technologies, with VR, you're going to need some kind of headset, either a Google Cardboard or one of these merge headsets that you pop your phone into, or an all-on-board headset like an Oculus. And with augmented reality, all you need really is your phone and sometimes a merge cube and different apps that help you interface with the digital world and your real world. Now, one thing I want to note about augmented reality is we are hurtling towards the holy grail of AR technology. One day, we will all own glasses that allow us to see the digital world just as part of our experience, and they will be as ubiquitous as our phones. And these will, like our phones, be world-changing and also really fraught. But many companies are hurtling towards this moment where we'll have this glasses technology. So be on the lookout for that.
Raven, right now, I've mostly encountered augmented reality in some interesting art exhibits where they're, augmenting what you see in the gallery and, Art Tech House in DC or some of those kind of places. And it's so neat and amazing, but I honestly can't even picture that being part of our daily experience. But I mean, like you said, it will be life-changing.
Yeah, and we're starting to see it crop up in a variety of different ways, and it's slowly easing its way into our world. If you go to the IKEA website, you can put furniture in your room. You can try on glasses on Zenny. Some heads-up displays, pilots use it already. So we're getting there. I think it's just going to be one of those things where, 20 years ago, none of us thought we would have a phone, tracking us all wherever we go. So, and also doing amazing things. So, this will be another one of those technologies that will rock our world one day. So when we think about VR and AR, when it comes to museums, thinking about how the virtual can help us connect with the real, we've kind of broken this presentation down into these 4 kind of core categories: preview or review, having access to the inaccessible, exploration and embodiment, and audience agency and engagement. And so they'll be kind of the 4 main banners that we kind of talk about AR and VR with. I've kind of curated a list of experiences that you might be interested in as people who are generally interested in the arts. I'm going to breeze through a lot of them rather quickly because we have a limited time and we want to have a chance to chat with one another. I did put in the chat links to all of the things I'm going to talk about. There's also a QR code on every slide, so if you hold your phone's camera app up to them, they'll take you right there. So we put a little AR right in the presentation. And we'll just kind of take a quick tour through some of these things. Sarah, am I missing anything?
I don't think so. That's a good introduction.
Okay. So thinking about preview and or review, so thinking about your museum visit as the event that has the most value. And Sarah and I, though we spend a lot of time in AR and VR in the world of the virtual, we both believe, I think I can say this for both of us, that nothing replaces a real world, real life experience in a museum or cultural heritage site. But using virtual experiences from any kind of site before or after, and sometimes during your visit, can enhance that experience. So the next few slides are going to be kind of a quick survey of some of the things that you might consider previewing or reviewing with. Anything before I move forward, Sarah?
All I would say is that preview or review is offered here as dual options. I also think that preview and review are some of the best ways that we can learn. And so doing what in education we call an anticipatory set, sort of gearing people up to what happens before an experience, teaching them the rules, showing them what to expect, and then also coming back on the end and closing the circle for students. There's rules for sort of VR and AR in both of those, imagining either a virtual experience in the middle or a real in-person experience in the middle. So it can be preview and or review.
So this is a shot from the inside of the Betterton Heritage Museum Ark. We have come to know that a fishing shanty or a skiff in Betterton is called an ark. And so this is said ark. This sits on the Betterton Heritage Museum property most of the time. It's only accessible by a set of stairs that somebody has to set up. So not everybody can just go in it. And so this virtual tour allows folks to visit it even when it's not accessible. But also it's a great opportunity to preview this space before you have a chance to view it. This virtual tour is embedded with oral history clips, so people can actually listen to Waterman talk about the importance of this vessel, and also hear people who helped in its preservation talk about its acquisition and renovation. So this is the Betterton Heritage virtual tour. So I'm just kind of scrolling my mouse around. We've embedded some video in it. So there's a YouTube video, which I won't play because that's a little meta. A video in a video in a video. We've embedded some web information too, and a link that you can do some research out on the web. You can also move through the space in this virtual tour. So you can kind of scroll around to get a little behind the scenes information. I love this little fact that when they were renovating this building, the folks that they hired to fix the cracks in the facade couldn't find just the right, stuff to fill those cracks. My father, a mason, would be really disappointed in me that I don't know what the word for the stuff is, but they just couldn't match it. And so one of the local, you know, gentlemen walked through, somebody lived there a long time, and said, I don't know, this looks like beach sand to me. And they went down to the beach and got that very particular Betterton beach sand and brought it up and fixed it. So this is something you wouldn't know just walking up to the building. So that preview, getting a chance to learn a little bit about the space before you enter it, is sort of an important thing. Again, embedding stories of the people who lived this history. And other museums, not just the local ones that Sarah and I work with, are doing this too. This is the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. And what I like about this particular tour is that you can kind of click these little points of interest on this map and be whisked away to the exhibit that you're interested in viewing or previewing. I chose dinosaurs because my son is a dinosaur lover, so we have spent a lot of time in this exhibit. I will also note that we did this exhibit with him for his birthday, and we bought all the kids these little like explorer outfits that came with binoculars. Bring up binoculars to a museum. It's the best. You can really see that the head of these dinosaurs, like get up high and look at stuff. So it's my pro tip for viewing the dinosaur exhibit.
Well, and Raven, it's so great that people can access it this way as well, because I know, was this something that this museum put together just during the pandemic, or did they already have something like this?
They've had this, and a lot of museums have lots of content online that we often forget about, because when we plan exhibit or we plan visits, we think about the physical, visit. But a lot of museums have a lot of content to explore.
Okay, cool, thanks.
One thing that probably wouldn't make it into our presentation for an adult audience, but here we'll mention, is that these sort of preparatory visits can also be really helpful for kids, and particularly kids with learning differences or social anxiety, or kids who have never had this kind of experience before. And I guess maybe also adults in any of those categories as well, being able to look at the layout of a space, to plan meetup places, to sort of work through social stories or imagine what it's going to be like to be in a place you've never experienced before, can go a long way to reducing anxiety and building excitement. And in those ways, like supporting student learning and adult learning.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the Hope Diamond, which we saw here, I have yet to, and I've visited this museum a ton of times, I have yet to get close enough to this thing at my 5-foot stature to like actually get up close to the Hope Diamond. And like, it is only through this that I've been able to like see the thing without a crowd of people. So the next thing virtual and augmented reality are good for are helping folks access the inaccessible. So, going to places that either are really difficult to travel to, or not everybody has access to, or places that only exist in the imagination. So this is one of my favorite ones of these tours. This is the Anne Frank House Secret Annex tour. And you can do this both in like virtual reality and a like VR contained headset, and it's a really beautiful experience. You can cry into a VR headset, turns out. That's an experience too. It's a very powerful experience in VR. But this is the computer-based one, so this is just on my desktop. And what's really moving and powerful about this space, and I was showing this to one of my students today, and he had the same thought. You read about Anne Frank, you read her diary, you do this curriculum in school, but conceiving of this space that they were in is so difficult. As a child, in my mind, this place was a closet. My student today, he said that he thought that they were, what did he say? He thought they were in like a room, like a single room. So being able to really visualize the space is a really powerful piece of this. And actually you can see like a cross section and actually visit these different spaces that they lived in. This is embedded with quotes from Anne's diary. It is very much a museum experience. It's deeply curated and really powerful and really moving. And as you move through the space, if you go through the order they've curated it in, it will lead you kind of through her story. So another, like, accessing the inaccessible, I have since, I cannot remember this artist's name. I promised myself I would know it by tonight, and I've lost it. Does anybody know? This is considered the world's first, I believe, underwater museum. This is a particular artist who intentionally creates sculptures that are meant to be at the bottom of the sea, and then coral reefs kind of build off of these sculptures. And his work also takes on issues of enslavement and the transatlantic slave trade. So the experience is at once like really moving and also ecological. And I'll point out that being able to access this underwater experience, you know, VR helps to make that possible. This is just on YouTube. YouTube has a ton of great VR to explore. So I'm kind of scrolling through. Again, you can do this on a computer. It's really great in a headset. So I'll leave a little to the imagination. Is that coming through okay, or is it all glitchy on your end?
It's pretty good. I think the thing that's nice to point out here, and that you know, we didn't mention in the outset, we think about accessing VR through a VR headset, or AR through your phone. But if you don't want to be in an immersive experience, but still want to have sort of a virtual tour, all of this is accessible using a desktop or a laptop computer, or also on your phone as well. It is both not for the faint of heart, and also very fun to get inside that immersive experience at least once to try it out. But some of this, as Raven's showing us here, you can just load as a video on YouTube and watch in the same way. And sometimes it's nice to have someone navigate. Sometimes it's nice to have someone navigate it for you as well, right? So oftentimes these virtual tours will be led by a tour guide, or will sort of be from the videographical perspective of the person who curated them. So you can kind of see with their eyes how they would move through the space as well.
So this is actually one of those experiences that Sarah's mentioning, where you're sort of led through the experience. And this is a good example of like one of these VR experiences that takes you to a place that only exists in the imagination. So this is by the Salvador Dali Museum. It's Dreams of Dali. It's a VR experience. This one is meant to be viewed in a headset. So this is what you're about to watch is a clip from that VR experience. And what it does is it inserts you in this world comprised of Dali's fantastical, imaginative, surrealist landscapes. Now the nice thing about this is it is a 360 video, so you can spin around a little bit. The sound is also kind of really fascinating in some VR because it's spatial, so it's all around you. So again, you can spin this around, so you're moving as you're looking. So as you approach this grove, you can look above you, below you. See Dali's famous faces embedded. In the VR headset, those whispers are happening in different ears, so it feels like you're in a space where the sound's happening around you. Dali's famous lobster phone sculpture, his Dada sculpture. So again, we'll leave some to the imagination. But sometimes VR can only take you to places only you can get to in VR. So augmented reality, these are 3D scans that you can view on a Smithsonian 3DSI website. You can also view them in augmented reality, but these are plaster casts of Lincoln's hands. So you're accessing the inaccessible because you're never going to be able to touch these things in real life. They're pointless. But you can get really up close and personal with them in this website. And the Smithsonian is doing a really great job of very rapidly making really high quality 3D models. There wasn't a lot of information on these pants, but I thought that they were really cool. A little homage to my hippie parents. But you can see how close you can get to the stitching in these pants.
Those are great jeans.
Aren't they cool? I know. I wish I had a pair like this. I think my mom maybe had a pair like this.
I probably made those.
You probably did make those. This is the Jamestown burial site too. So there's a lot of cultural heritage sites that are interested in AR and 3D scanning. Archaeological digs are getting into this, so you can kind of see the layers of the dig. And there are teams of intrepid photogrammetrists who are people who specialize in 3D modeling and 3D scanning, who are actually going into places like Afghanistan that are war-torn or about to be war-torn, to preserve in 3D their cultural heritage sites before they're blown up. And I think that's really important work if we can't preserve physical sites, to be able to preserve them digitally. And then this tool, SKETCHFAB, is an online, it's like the YouTube of 3D models, but they have a whole museum section where museums from all over the world post 3D models of their objects. And you can view them both on your computer, but also in augmented reality. So this is just a quick scroll through of the many museum objects that you can look at. And then in a minute, you'll see some of them a little bit close up. Back up a little. So this is a bowl artifact. You can get very close to. So some of the objects are single objects. Some of them are annotated. Some of them not in English. But I thought this one was really cool. And some of them are entire exhibits that you can lead yourself through and spin around. My student told me to tell everybody tonight that the resolution on this is it's not rendering really well because I'm moving really fast through this. So sometimes these demand your computer to do a lot, and you are better to pause and let like all the pixels happen. And I did not do that when I made this video. So the detail on this is actually a lot better than it's showing up in this video.
That's amazing, like you said, to make things accessible that somebody might not get a chance to see, more of like a behind the scenes collection room and all of these different pieces that would normally maybe be behind glass and can't be touched. And like you said, with Hope Diamond, you can't get close to.
Exactly. And I think that that's one of the most exciting things about VR and AR technology in museums. So exploration and embodiment. So how do we let people explore things on their own and have a sense of free will? Or how do we let people embody somebody else's experience? Oops. How do we go backwards on our slide deck? There we go. So this is notes on blindness. John Hull was a man who in the 1980s started to go blind, and he struggled with that experience, and so he created audio cassettes recording what his daily experience in losing his sight was. Years later, a documentary was made about those tapes, and then this VR experience, which is really strikingly beautiful, it's definitely an art piece, was created out of those tapes. So the audio you're hearing is John Hull's recordings, and then an artist's kind of visualization of what that that experience or what he's narrating might have been like.
This is cassette 1, track 1, Notes on Blindness.
Sitting in the park with the children, I hear the footsteps of people walking past me, rustling of the newspaper, murmur of conversation. The myriad voices and sounds create a panorama of music and information.
So I'll pause here again just to give a little taste. I see that we're coming up on 5:45, so I think I'm going to stop our presentation here. Again, the links to more are in the chat. And I'll point out that Google Arts and Culture, if you're going to get your feet wet in virtual tours, I would start at Google Arts and Culture because it's just a one-stop shop for some of the best art and cultural experiences all over the world. So I'm going to stop my presentation. And I know we started a little bit late. I don't know what everybody's time is, but if we wanted to have a brief conversation about some of the things we've seen here or some of your thoughts or questions about AR and VR museums, we can have that conversation.
Raven, thank you so much to you and Sarah both. I mean, that is fascinating. I first, I think, reached out to ask you guys to present after hearing you present at a conference to some of your peers and educators. And I feel like we saw more details of some of the things today. And I just kept getting closer and closer to the screen like, ooh. So I look forward to following up on these. I'm sorry that we talked a little much at the beginning, hoping we'd have more people join us, and didn't give you quite enough time to cover. I think there's a lot more you could go on. So I'd love to hear from your mom or Mark or anybody else who has questions or just, you know, something interesting about all that you've talked about.
You know, I didn't realize we were videoing because just the way the setup when you came on. And I wasn't on video, but anyway, you know, the last year and a half, especially because I've been doing these art posts every day, I have spent tons of time because, like, I'll have this painting I took a picture of and I'll Google it. You know, I always take the picture of the label too, but I'm always Googling, and you know, so you end up going to the Guggenheim's website, and sometimes there's an audio of the label or some interview or something. There's all kinds of resources. That's also led me into like I get emails from Harvard art museums and a bunch of different places, and they have a lot of content now. You know, like they have Whitney has their fellows every Tuesday and Thursday for half an hour. They take a number of pieces. You know, there's just a whole lot of content I didn't realize. And on YouTube, you know, it's a time sink. You know, when I was sitting at home a year ago, not that I ever really sit at home, but you know, you could spend all day long. So this is a good thing and a bad thing that you've taught me that there's this 3D version of things, because this is just even more potential for time sinking. So when I'm sure I'll be up here again in January and February like I was last year, and it was so damn cold here. Oh my God, 2 feet of snow. So as long as internet stays up, this will be a good thing to do. You know, I've got another addiction of collecting museum books, and you know, my rationale is when I'm old and crotchety and I can't get to the museums anymore, I'll have the books. But I'm realizing that everything's on, you know, you can look at everything at the Guggenheim, and you can you know, some museums let you download and you can blow it up on your monitor. You know, it's not quite the same as being there and looking at all the brush strokes, and certainly I'm not so much or I haven't, I'm more of a painting guy rather than objects, but you know, this gives the opportunity, like you're saying, to look at the objects up close and personal, probably even closer than you can at the museum. So it's very cool. And who knew that Washington College was doing a project on this? I had no idea. So,
We are. Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
It's nice to hear how cool we are. From you particularly, Mark. But I want to say something about.
Well, both of you were cool before, and Raven, I'm glad you're back from doing all your stuff, and I heard you're back on the board and all that stuff. So that's great, because it was disappointing when you left, for sure. So.
Here's
Yeah,
the
I'm
thing
really
about
glad to be back.
brushstrokes, Mark, and I think you picked up on this a little in your last comment, but one of Google Arts and Culture, I mean, you could spend a lifetime on there, but one of the amazing things, you know, and I use this example often when I'm talking to people about this, is to go in and just look at Van Gogh in Google Arts and Culture. And here's what you can do. You can look at sunflowers zoomed in to like your eyeballs are at the canvas level, looking at every single brushstroke that's there. You can, which is obviously a million times closer than you would be able to get even unless you were the curator or, you know, the conservator holding that piece.
Right.
You can, and then you can go to the Van Gogh Museum and take a guided virtual tour as it is curated, or you click one click over and it's a walking tour of the cities that Van Gogh painted in, and it clicks you place to place on a virtual map and brings you to the physical locations where he was doing paintings. Or you can click another thing that shows every painting he's ever done arranged by color and hue. So you can look from yellow to blue to everything, you know, it's just, it is unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's
but
still
even
not the same. It's still not the same as being there. But
it's absolutely not the same. I think that
actually, I got to see Starry Night at MoMA like 2 weeks ago. I was in New York, and it was pretty nice. It's pretty nice. I hadn't been to MoMA a long time. So it's a beautiful museum. But I'm lucky because I still have friends who live in New York, and so I get to stay there for free, and I go there all the time. Not everybody has that opportunity. So
I feel like you guys have introduced us to not only the virtual reality and the augmented reality, but I mean, a little more into just what you just showed us while you were talking and then guiding us through Google Arts and Culture. There's so much out there, and I'm picturing the auditory component. Like, I have a daughter that you all know, like, who's super into musical theater, and there's a off-Broadway thing called Starry, and it's the whole musical about like Vincent van Gogh's brother and their letters and all this stuff. And I have these songs going through my head while I'm looking at this music, and like just the connections of all of this. It's just fantastic. And yes, Washington College, that was one of the things I was thinking when you started talking about and showing pictures of artists, and like the fact that those students, I mean, I wonder if they realize like how incredibly lucky they are to have those resources right here in Chestertown for them. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it is
really
very
exciting.
cool.
Thank you for being here.
Have you done the Cole Gallery yet?
So years ago, I make it sound like years ago, about what, 4 or 5 years ago, our work in augmented and virtual reality started before Vardis. Heather Calloway, who had been the archivist, and I started this project called Augmented Archives. And we were using augmented reality to bring archive objects to life. And we did lots of little like micro projects within that project, one of which was we made a talking portraits tour where the portraits on our campus came to life and talked to you Harry Potter style and told you about the history of Washington College. We also augmented all these like exhibit materials, and they were all scannable and kind of came to life and told you about themselves. So we did that in Cole Gallery. That was part of our Sandbox grant. That project culminated in, we ended up going to this thing called ILLiADS, the Institute for Liberal Arts Digital Scholarship, and we ended up creating our own app and going to ILLiADS to kind of accelerate that app. So that was kind of a cool experiment. It really kickstarted our engagement in AR and VR as it pertains to like museums and archives and special collections. But we haven't done anything in Cole Gallery since, because our focus has sort of shifted to working with the local museums here in our community. So we've kind of taken the show on the road. So it might be worth kind of thinking again about exhibits and exhibit spaces here on campus and what that might look like.
Yeah.
How many museums in Kent County? We're only 3 museums into 12 museums of Kent County. So I like to
Oh,
say
yeah.
we've got 12 years of natural life.
You have plenty of content to work on.
Yes, we do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all. I know it's like 5:52 and we always try to, cut off at a certain good time, but thank you for sharing the links of all the other things that you were going to talk about. And it's just really a joy to see both of you and your smiling faces and to have a conversation, even though we're not all in the same place. So thank you for taking the time today and tonight with what you're doing with Arts Alive and Make Space, and just for sharing your creative time and talents with RiverArts. So we always end with a toast, and I'd say, here's a toast to, one of my favorite quotes is to live a great story. And I think that you all show us these stories that have been lived all these different places. And that's one of the benefits of what you're doing. So here's to living a great story, which we know you're up to, Mark. So cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sarah and Reagan.
Thank you.
Have a good
Bye.
Bye.